So 9.2 is on the Kreb cycle and electron transport chain, and we're going to start dealing with the aerobic portion of cellular respiration. Aerobic means oxygen is required, and the Kreb cycle is the second stage of respiration that occurs when oxygen is present. So we talked about fermentation when there's no oxygen. That follows the glycolysis. Now we're going to follow glycolysis with the Kreb cycle when there is oxygen. So during the Krebs cycle, the pyruvic acid that was created during glycolysis is broken down in a series into carbon dioxide in a series of energy extracting reactions. So if we take a look at this diagram right here, what you need to understand from this is that we are creating those NADHs and FADH2s and ATPs. Now that one ATP that we're going to create is going to be used just as general energy. It's already created, it's good to go. Those NADHs and FADH2s are going to be used in the electron transport chain. Now if you take a look up there, you see that only one pyruvic acid goes into the Krebs cycle. Remember, we created two pyruvic acids during glycolysis. So for every one glucose, we get 2 runs of the Krebs cycle, which means we'll end up with 2 total ATPs, 2 FADH2s, and if you look, you can see that we'll end up with 8 NADHs. FAD, flavin adenine dinucleotide, is similar to NADH. For each turn of the Krebs cycle, a molecule equivalent to ATP is produced. Next, look at the electron carriers. For each turn, 5 pairs of carriers are created, so 4 NADH and 1 FADH. Every time you breathe out, carbon dioxide comes from the Krebs cycle, and the energy from the Krebs cycle goes out to other cells to carry out cellular activity. The huge energy carriers like NADH can be used to create huge amounts of ATP. Now, those carriers, as we'll see in this next slide, the electron transport chain is where the electrons go after being carried by NAD and FADH2. The electron transport chain uses the high energy electrons from Krebs for ADP to ATP. And the electron transport chain is found in the inner membrane of the mitochondria. In prokaryotes, it's found in the cell membrane. It is made of a series of carrier proteins. High energy electrons are passed from one carrier protein to another. At the end of the chain is an enzyme that combines low energy electrons with hydrogen and oxygen to form water. Oxygen is important to us because it takes the waste electrons and waste hydrogen. So every time 2 high energy electrons go down the chain, their energy is used to transport H plus ions across the membrane. These H plus ions build up, making the charge inside positive. The cell uses this charge difference to power ATP synthase. On average, for every pair of high energy electrons that moves down the electron transport chain, enough energy is created to convert 3-ADP to 3-ATP. And we see right here, basically what we're doing is we're taking that NAD, that bottom part there, and we're using it to put hydrogens in the membrane. Those hydrogens in the membrane are going to be used to create ATP, and the electrons that come from it are going to be used to make water. And finally, cellular respiration results in 36 net ATPs, which represents 38% of glucose's energy. The remaining 62% are given off as heat from our bodies. So if you think about it, our bodies heat up when we're undergoing strenuous activity, and this is because we are creating we're trying to create energy, and the waste is given off as heat.